I thought I'd seen every crazy twist in crypto, but then I stumbled on a rumor about a Chainlink ETF. Yeah, Chainlink, not Bitcoin or Ethereum, getting the kind of Wall Street treatment. So my heart abows to jump out of my chest here. If you've ever kind of felt your crypto investments were a roller coaster, buckle up, because this story became personal fast. And what I discovered along the way, well, let's just say it surprised me as much as it might surprise you. So, the other night I'm doom scrolling crypto news, as one does, and a headline flashes. Grayscale is filing for a Chainlink ETF. Now, I nearly spat out my coffee, an ETF for Link. Now, I remember thinking there's just no way this can't be real. I mean, we've only gotten Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs approved in the United States, and those took, well, forever. But here it was, a legit plan to bring an altcoin, my altcoin, into the big leagues. I couldn't just scroll past that. This became my mission for the week, to find out what the heck is actually going on and whether this could change the game for Chainlink holders like me. And spoiler, it's way more than I actually bargained for. Now, at first, I'll admit, I kind of just rolled my eyes. Another crypto ETF story. Been there, done that. Part of me thought, is this really a big deal or is it just more hype? But curiosity got the better of me. I started digging, and one of the first things that I realized was who was actually behind this. Grayscale. Now, these guys are the world's largest crypto asset manager, and they don't play around. Just last year, in 2024, they finally got the SEC to allow them to convert their flagship Bitcoin and Ethereum trusts into real spot ETFs. That was a huge kind of watershed moment, like finally, Wall Street gave a nod to crypto in a way that we've been waiting for, or at least for years. So what did Grayscale do after scoring that win? Did they just kick back and relax? No, they started going after other coins. The firm has been filing for all sorts of altcoin ETFs. Recently, you've got Avalanche and Dogecoin. Yes, Doge, right? Believe it or not. On top of earlier applications for Ripple's XRP, Litecoin, and Solana. They've even been getting fancy with products like Ethereum, right? Covered Call ETF, ticker ETCO, which, by the way, sounds like something dreamed up by a crypto options trader who wants to wear a suit. The bottom line here is that Grayscale is on a mission to bring the whole basket of cryptos to the traditional finance table. And now, Chainlink is on that list. Now, according to the SEC filing, Grayscale wants to take its existing Chainlink Trust and convert it into an ETF. So if the SEC gives the thumbs up, well, this fund would trade on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker symbol GLNK. Pretty catchy, I know, right? GLNK, short for Grayscale Link, right? I guess, anyway. They even named Coinbase Custody as the custodian, meaning Coinbase would hold all of the actual Link tokens in cold storage to keep them safe. So far, so straightforward. But here is where it gets really interesting. The filing says that the fund may stake a portion of its Link holdings to earn rewards. I was like, wait, what? Staking inside of an ETF? Now, this was a first for me, because basically, if regulations allow, Grayscale is like, why not put some of that idle Link to work? Now, they would use third-party services to stake the token while keeping everything secure in Coinbase's custody. And any staking rewards, which would be more Link tokens, could then either be kept in the fund, sold off, or even distributed to the ETF investors. In plain English, this ETF might not just track the price of Chainlink, it could also earn a kind of interest, like dividends from staking. Now, that's a pretty wild fusion of crypto and traditional investing, and honestly, it made me perk up even more. Now, aside from that twist, the structure is similar to the Bitcoin and Ethereum spot ETFs that are already out there. Specifically, creation and redemptions of the ETF shares would be done in cash, not by shuffling around actual Link tokens back and forth. Now, that might sound like trivia, but it actually is done to make regulators comfy and streamline operations. It means that if big institutions want in, well, they can just wire dollars in and out without dealing with the technical hassles of moving crypto around. For the average investor, you wouldn't even notice any difference. It's just a behind-the-scenes kind of thing that keeps everything running smoothly. And it keeps the SEC happy. Now, one question I had was, is Grayscale the only one seeing this opportunity? Are they just throwing stuff at the wall, or is there actually real demand here? And it turns out they're not alone. Another major player, Bitwise Asset Management, has also filed for a Chainlink ETF. Yeah, competition in the race for the first Link ETF. Interestingly, Bitwise's proposal didn't mention anything about staking tokens for yield. Now that could mean that Bitwise is playing a more traditional, or maybe they just didn't think of it. Either way, when two big firms are eyeing for, at least to offer, the very same kind of product, you know that there's something brewing here. Now, they wouldn't be spending time and spending money on this if they didn't think that investors would want it. Now, of course, just because these companies want to launch a Chainlink ETF doesn't mean that it's going to happen overnight. Enter the fun police, I mean the SEC, right? If you've kind of been around, I guess, the crypto block, you know that the SEC has a habit of dragging its feet on approving anything new in crypto. And sure enough, right, they've been delaying decisions on similar proposals. Right? Let's just take an example of the 𝗗𝗶𝘀𝗰𝗋 ETF application from a company called Canary. Now, the SEC have pushed that back, at least pushed back that decision multiple times at this point, most recently adding another 60 days to the clock. The same story with Grayscale's proposal for Polkadot ETF, also delayed to around November 8th. In fact, November 8th, 2025 is kind of a big day for a whole bunch of proposals. It's kind of like D-Day for altcoin ETFs, when we'll actually finally hear a yes or a no, or maybe another delay, but let's hope not. So what this means for Chainlink is that even though the filing is in, we shouldn't expect a yes or a no immediately, right? The SEC could very well kick the can down the road, as they often do. It's almost a running joke at this point. Now, you get excited for an approval deadline, and then boom, extension granted, game on hold, right? I've learned not to hold my breath here. And there's also a non-zero chance that the SEC flat out denies it, right? So while I'm excited by a kind of prospect of a Link ETF, I'm also managing my expectations. If it gets approved sooner than expected, then I'll be pleasantly surprised. If not, well, that's just par for the course. Now, amid all of the waiting and the speculating, I came across something that really drove home how much Chainlink as a project has going on beyond just this ETF stuff. Now, Chainlink's co-founder, 𝗗𝗗𝗀𝗰𝗋, has been making the rounds with some pretty high-profile people. Now, I read that he actually met with former SEC chairman Paul Atkins, and even some bigwigs at the White House. And they weren't just chit-chatting about the weather. They were discussing how to strengthen the United States' role in tokenized assets, focusing on proper regulation and compliance to, well, make it happen. Now, this is big. Let's think about it, right? One of the brains behind Chainlink is directly engaging with policymakers about integrating blockchain tech into the heart of finance. The discussions were reportedly about making sure that the United States doesn't fall behind in the tokenization of things like stocks, real estate, and who knows what else, right? And here's the most important thing, Chainlink, being a kind of leader in connecting blockchains to real-world data, is naturally a key player in that arena. I mean, if you're going to tokenize everything under the sun, then you need a reliable oracle to basically feed those systems data, prices, interest rates, weather info for crop insurance tokens, whatever it might be. And that is Chainlink's wheelhouse. And here's what kind of blew my mind, or mind-blowing stat, I could say, that came up. The whole tokenization market, basically kind of digitalizing, real-world assets on the blockchain, is projected to be worth something like $30 trillion in the future. That was trillion with a T. Now, it's almost hard to kind of wrap my head around that number, but a lot of rather smart people think that's where we're actually heading, and soon. And Sergey is there basically waving the Chainlink flag, saying, hey, let's do this right and let the US lead it. Now, if Chainlink is at the forefront of a $30 trillion tokenization wave, well, that could make an ETF just the tip of the iceberg. It's kind of like one more way for people to get exposure. But the real story is actually the tectonic shift in how assets are managed and traded. Now, all this kind of future talk has me wondering about the present, specifically Chainlink's price, and how this news might affect it. Now, I'm trying not to obsess over the price in these kind of videos. Okay, who am I kidding? We peek at the chart, we all do, right? But it kind of feels relevant here, right? At least at the time I'm actually speaking, Link is trading at around the kind of low $20 ranges. And it's had a heck of a year so far, up roughly 125% since January. Now that means if you threw in $100 in New Year's, well, you'd actually be about $225 right now. Not too shabby, right? Now, some analysts are even predicting that Chainlink's total value locked, basically the measure of how much value is flowing through Chainlink's network, could reach about $52 billion by the end of 2025. And if that happens, well, it could be a huge jump, reflecting a lot of adoption. Now, naturally, when people kind of hear ETF, they think price go up. But I'm not going to lie, right? The thought maybe even crossed my mind too, right? If a Chainlink ETF is approved, well, will a ton of new money rush in and pump my bags? Now, in theory, more accessibility could equal more demand. Imagine every financial advisor who was just too skittish to buy crypto directly suddenly having the option to put clients into Link through an ETF. Even a small allocation from a few big players could actually move the needle quite significantly. Now, we've seen it with Bitcoin, right? When the first Bitcoin futures ETFs launched, it coincided with a Bitcoin reaching a new all-time high around that kind of $69,000 area. And just the anticipation of spot ETFs has been kind of cited to fuel some pretty decent rallies. And new Bitcoin spot ETF inflows are pretty insane too. But we also have to be careful. The crypto market has a way of kind of baking in expectations. By the time an ETF is actually approved, a lot of the traders may already have bought the rumor and could very well sell the news. Look at Bitcoin, right? When the actual ETFs landed, the world didn't change overnight. The price didn't 10x magically. It was kind of a step forward, but not a rocket launch. Now, I suspect similar with Chainlink, right? An approved ETF would likely get a green light in the long run, but any kind of immediate price reaction could be more muted or even temporarily disappointing if people expected the moon and only got an airplane ride. And please remember, I'm saying this as much for myself and for anyone watching, crypto is volatile and nothing is guaranteed. In fact, let me kind of put on my serious voice for just a second and remind everyone of this, because this might just shock you, but I'm not a financial advisor and nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile and you could lose all of the money that you invest. You should always do your own research and consult a qualified professional. After all, your investments are entirely your responsibility, and you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any losses. This video today is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Alright, so that's a disclaimer done. It had to be done. But yeah, right, I'm talking about price and big future scenarios, but none of this is a sure thing. Now, on a personal note, I mentioned that I hold some Link. It's not my largest position, but it's definitely up there. But it's one that I've kind of been interested in for quite a while. So this news kind of hits close to home, doesn't it? Right? I won't pretend that I'm unbiased here, right? A part of me is definitely rooting for this ETF to go through. If, only for the validation that a project that I believe in is getting that kind of mainstream nod. But I also remember how many times that I've gotten my hopes up in crypto only to be let down later. So I'm optimistic, but I'm keeping my feet firmly on the ground. In fact, I was chatting with some people in our Discord about this the other day. By the way, if you're not in the Discord, you should join. It's completely free, it's educational, and it's a cool place to just hang out with fellow crypto nerds. The link is in the description. Anyway, I asked everyone, what would you do if Chainlink's ETF gets approved? Now, the answers were all over the place. Some said that they would buy more Link immediately because, well, they would expect a surge. Others said that they would actually take the opportunity to sell a little into the hype, classic contrarian move. And then there were those who, like me, are more kind of in the kind of wait and see camp. We're excited, but we're not going to be making anything, at least any kind of drastic kind of moves, until things are a little bit more official. Now, one thing that I love about all of these moments in crypto is how they spark stories and memories, right? Now, I texted a buddy of mine, the guy who convinced me to buy Chainlink back in 2018, and I said, yo, is this ETF, or at least if this ETF gets approved, does that mean our Link is finally going to the moon? He joked back and said, if it hits triple digits, dinner is on me, right? See, we've had this kind of long-running joke or bet, that he would buy me a steak dinner if Link ever hit $100. Now, it hasn't happened yet. The highest it's gotten to was around $50 in the last bull run. So I'm still waiting on that steak dinner. But now he's actually thinking he might have to pay up in the next few months or even a year or so. Now, honestly, even if Link doesn't hit $100, just kind of the fact that we're talking about ETFs and institutional adoption is something that we never really imagined back when we first bought those tokens. So it's kind of like our little crypto baby is growing up and getting invited to the adults' table. Now, quick reality check. You don't need an ETF to invest in Chainlink, right? If all of this talk has got you interested and you aren't already holding Link, well, you can buy it directly on any kind of other crypto or any other cryptocurrency, right? It's listed on plenty of different exchanges. Now, I personally use a couple of platforms for trading. One is Blowfin and the other one is BitGet. Now, they're user-friendly and they have a good variety of different tokens and coins. Here's a shameless plug though. I do have an affiliate link for both of these in the description below. They're using those links. They actually support the channel here because I get a kickback if you sign up and trade through them. There's no extra cost to you either. So if you are going to sign up in any way, it's kind of like a win-win. You get a solid platform that you can trade on, and it helps me with content like this and keep on coming, right? But there is no pressure, right? You can use any exchange that you like and that you trust. Just make sure that you're buying it from a reputable source and storing your crypto safely if you do decide to go down the DIY route. By the way, hardware wallets, I use Ledger, also affiliate link in the description below. But that's more important. When it comes to hardware wallets, always buy direct from the manufacturer. All right, let's get back to the story to round things out here, because chasing this Chainlink ETF rumor turned out to be a bigger adventure than maybe I'd expected. It went from being maybe a little bit skeptical, basically thinking, "Mayor, wake me up when something actually happens," to digging through the filings, reading up on the tokenization, and getting a peek at high-level crypto diplomacy. Shout out to Sergey making moves in DC. Now, it reminded me why I fell in love with crypto in the first place. There's always something new around the corner. And something, sometimes I should say, it's not just about the price pumping, right? It's actually about the technology inching further into the real world. So, where do I stand on now with all of this? Well, whether or not the SEC approves the Chainlink ETF soon, I'm convinced that Chainlink is a project with a solid trajectory, right? The very fact that it's being considered for an ETF is being discussed, and being discussed in regulatory circles, means that it's being taken rather seriously. And that is huge. It means that the conversation has moved from, is this crypto thing a scam, to how can we integrate this crypto thing into our existing systems without breaking stuff. And that is progress. I'm going to keep my Link bags packed and locked away safely. And yes, some of it is staked for some sweet, sweet passive income. I will keep an eye on the SEC's announcements around November and beyond. And I'll definitely be staying tuned for what Chainlink does next, ETF or no ETF, because I have a feeling that this whole thing won't be, at least I have this feeling that it won't be the last time that Chainlink actually makes these kind of headlines. Now, it's kind of poetic in a way, right? A couple of years ago, nobody outside of crypto circles really cared about oracles or data feeds in any way possible. Now we've got suits and ties looking at Chainlink ETFs and policymakers debating tokenization at the White House. Now, if that doesn't say we're not in Kansas anymore, I don't know what does. Anyway, I've rambled on long enough here. So if you've made it this far, thanks for coming along on this little journey with me. I hope it gave you some insights or at least entertained you just a little bit. Now, I know that I've learned a ton by researching all of this. So if it has for you, smash the like button, smash the subscribe button for more crypto adventures, and I'll catch you all in the next one.